Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my dark academia mug from Book Babe Designs and some red lipstick. I think these mugs are super cute. I really love Book Babe Designs mugs and the designs she does like this of like bookish things. So today's video is going to be a book review on the Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is book 1 in the Shadow of the Leviathan series, and it is a new release. It came out February 6th, so it's been out a little over a month, but I was able to get my hands on this from Libby and listen to it and wanted to give you my thoughts and my review on this book. First off, this is my first book from this author, Robert Jackson Bennett. I have been intrigued by his Foundry Side series, and I think City of Stairs also had me, like it was in my head that John might like it. So I've heard of his books have been around, but I've never personally read one. But when I heard about the premise of this book, I was really intrigued and I really wanted to read it, so I tried to get it pretty quickly while trying to fit it into my TBR and not wrecking everything. So I finally got it, was able to listen to it, and really liked this book. And essentially the premise of this book is that there is an inspector that is called to investigate a death because for all intents and purposes, it seems that a tree has spontaneously erupted in the body of this high imperial officer. And this is unheard of. This is like impossible. It's possibly a contagion because of the magic in the Leviathan's blood, and it poses a lot of potentially dangerous outcomes. And so this investigator is called onto the scene to kind of get to the bottom of what's happening. But she recently has a new assistant, Din, and his last name is Cole, and they call him Cole a lot. And he is an engraver, which means he is magically altered to possess perfect memory. So he's teaming up with this inspector, Anna, as her assistant so that he can remember everything and kind of help her solve this crime. So that's kind of the premise you're dealing with. I was super interested in that because a fantasy mystery book was what I wanted. Like, I love that idea. I really loved Stalking Jack the Ripper, that series, and that was less fantastical than this, and I loved that. So I really like mystery books, but more so investigation, crime-solving kind of books. And that's what this is. But it also has kind of a twist of being a Sherlock Watson type of scenario and team, because the Inspector Anna is very eccentric and she will like blindfold herself so that she can dull that sense so that her other senses are enhanced, and so that she could potentially like make links she may not have been able to with her eyesight and things like that that just make her very interesting. Reminds you a lot of Sherlock Holmes and how eccentric but brilliant he is, and able to look past the normal conclusions we come to, be able to use deductive reasoning, but also have no clue how to navigate social norms. And then the inspector, you're following his perspective. So you're following Din and you're in his head. It's really interesting how the magic kind of works in this world because he's an engraver, like I mentioned before, so he's been magically altered. And other people in this world have also been magically altered. There's ones called cracklers, which have been magically altered to be like bigger, stronger, like their bones are reinforced so they can withstand higher impacts, so they can lift things that are bigger. There's a lot of like genetic modifications, but it's magical genetic modifications. So it's really interesting, and a lot of those will have side effects later on in their lives. And they call them cracklers because they crack and creak and stuff because of how many modifications are in their body. It's really interesting. I will say that while the world is really interesting and potentially very vast, it doesn't delve into, at least in this book in particular, it doesn't really delve super far into how the world works. It's more of focusing on solving this mystery and this crime element, rather than all of the things that could potentially happen with the magic in this world. We know that the Leviathans and the blood of the Leviathans is kind of where this magic is coming from, and that it's kind of sinister, and they built up walls around the cities, like around the sea, to keep the Leviathans out, and occasionally the Leviathans will try to break through. So we know that that's an element, but we don't really know why or things like that. And we also don't fully know, at least from what I got, you don't fully know all of the different ways people can be genetically modified, but they do show you examples of several. And there was another kind of thing, I mentioned this to John at one point. I was listening to it, and it was towards the end of the book, and they kept referring to people as these colors. And I started to kind of piece together, but I couldn't get a full picture in my head, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but it seemed to be that they would say, oh, he's been very magically modified because he is more purple than gray. And the picture that was painting for me is that they are more gray skinned, and the more magically modified you are, the more purple you are, or the more those parts of you are purple. So say you have a really magically enhanced hand, your hands will be purple. That was interesting because I was catching kind of pieces that they were saying, but I don't think they ever straight up said like, everyone's skin tone is gray. Like, I don't think that's what they said, but that was kind of what I was picking up on, and I could be wrong about that. But if you've read this, I would like to know your opinion on that as well. But it did talk about how somebody, I don't remember the term, but their noses were magically enhanced. So they could like sniff you out like a bloodhound basically, and their noses were purple, prominently purple. And there was others that were like magically modified to basically be courtesans, which was really sad. But anyway, a lot of different magical modifications that were going on or that could potentially be going on. But it was really cool to follow Din's perspective. I think it would have been cool to get the inspector's POV, just because you would be in her head and seeing how she unravels things, but you kind of get that already because she's speaking it to Din, and he's able to kind of like track with her sometimes and start to realize how she's coming to these conclusions and help her solve this. But I think the interesting part of the dynamic, while it's Sherlock Watson-esque, which is cool, Anna is a female, Din is a male. I do like that aspect, but also because he's an engraver and because he memorizes everything and has perfect memory, he will go into a crime scene, he will look around, and he will take like a vial of sage and he will smell it. Because smell, as we know from learning this in school, you can tie memory really well to smell and scent. And I thought that was really interesting that the author tapped into that, and he had these vials that he would smell so that when he smelled the vial later, he would be more readily able to recount the conversations, the setting, the scene, the tones, the body movements of the people, everything. So he already is magically altered to have this perfect memory, but he would utilize those scents to trigger their memories faster. So he would basically go into a scene, the inspector would not be present. He would be able to absorb all of that and then go back to her and recount it verbatim with tones and everything. And it would skip that part in the book, which I think is cool and appreciative because you don't want to hear the same things over and over again. But the idea of that was super interesting and cool, and I loved that idea. But because of that, he's also kind of thrust into a lot of dangerous situations. And as you're following him, you find out that he has like a secret that he's very hesitant to let get out. And he's also much older than he should be as an assistant. He should kind of be an inspector on his own, but instead he is not. He's an assistant, and you're kind of figuring out why as you go. But he feels like he's failing a little bit, and this is kind of his last chance, he feels like. So he's got a lot writing on this, and he also has these secrets and these things that he's wrestling with, which makes him a very interesting character to follow. And then teamed up with the eccentric inspector, it was a really, really fun duo. I really enjoyed them together. And it was really interesting, and the world was really cool, even if it didn't expound upon it as much as I would have liked. I did enjoy that it focused more on the mystery. It was also funny how Anna, the inspector, was so socially awkward. Not in the sense that she wanted to be socially accepted, but in the sense that she just had no idea it was weird. And those situations kind of come up in the book, and it's funny, and you're just like, oh no. And Din's like, Anna, stop. It's just, I really enjoyed their dynamic. I really enjoyed the humor and the story itself. The humor, while there are a lot of aspects of it, and you could get into it, it's more of a dark whodunit type story. So don't go into it think it's going to be really lighthearted, but there are humorous elements. The story was really interesting. I really love the mystery element and the fantasy elements. There's some dark things, and there is a contagion basically that is potentially going to be released on the city where trees and plants are like spontaneously erupting from people. That can be a little gruesome. But it's also interesting because this is a series. This is the first book in a series, and I'm very interested to see where this series goes and if this is going to be a continual storyline, or if it's going to be like separate mysteries in every book. I don't know, but I like that either way. Overall, I thought this was a really unique book. It was very intriguing. If you like crime solving, mystery elements mixed with a fantasy world and also more on the sinister side, I think you would like this. If you want it to be really funny and lighthearted, this might not be the book for you, but I would say that if you like plants even, if you're interested in like botanicals, botany, those types of things, and mystery and crime, maybe potentially fantasy as well, that you would like this just for it being interesting to you, even if the story is not usually your thing. And there's a little bit of like rooting for the underdog. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought I would like it, but I was very happy that I did really enjoy this. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. There was a couple of situations that in the book where I was like, is this really necessary? Like, is it really necessary to try to thwart the assistant by throwing a woman at him? That he resisted, and I'm happy to say that that is the case. I really hate plot lines where a woman potentially only exists as a character to be thrown at a man. It frustrates me, but I also understood it in this context. Besides that though, 4.5 stars, loved this book. It was really good. I would suggest checking it out if it's at all interesting to you. Even though I don't have a copy of it, I do want one. Well, that is my review and thoughts on The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Please comment down below and let me know if you've read this book or if you're intrigued to read this book now. As always, thank you so much for watching, but that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.